Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
From the Herald, Wednesday the 17th of August 2022, from the Voices section. Adam Tompkins. No one has to read Rushdie or see Sadovitz, but free speech is sacrosanct. By columnist Adam Tompkins. Freedom of speech is not a given, it has to be fought for. Almost always there will be those who want to silence people they dislike or disagree with, and always those of us who consider this wrong-headed and indeed dangerous must fight back. None of this is new, but all of it remains vital. John Milton knew it when he penned his great tirade against censorship in 1644. Voltaire knew it when he battled the censoriousness of the church a century later. And John Stuart Mill knew it when he wrote the most brilliant and the most impassioned defence of free speech of them all. Mill's genius was to put a finger on the core of the problem. Speech cannot be banned just because someone is offended by what is said. It can be banned only when it causes harm, and being harmed is not even remotely the same as being offended. None of this means that speech can go unregulated. Free speech is, and always has been, something of a misnomer. We may not use words to harm one another, that is to say, to threaten or to abuse one another. Similarly, we may not use words to defame one another. Threatening speech may be criminal. Defamatory speech may be actionable. To be even the strongest advocate of free speech, then, is in no sense to imagine that speech can go unlicensed, still less that there should never be consequences attached to what you choose to say. But it is to say, with Mill, that causing offence is, of itself, never a sufficient reason to cancel someone's speech. If you are offended by something someone has said, the answer is not to silence them, but to speak back. Freedom of speech is in the news this week because of two incidents: the attempted murder of Salman Rushdie in New York, and the cancelling of Jerry Sadowitz's show at the Edinburgh Fringe. It will be for the American criminal justice system to determine the motives of Rushdie's attacker, but Salman's life has been under threat for 30 years because what he wrote in one of his novels offended followers of one of the world's great religions. I read the Satanic Verses when it was published. It is a brilliant novel. I lent my copy to a friend and never saw it again. I ordered a new copy this week and will read it as soon as it arrives. I've never been to a Jerry Sadowitz show. I'm not much interested in conjuring tricks, and his brand of humour does not appeal to me. If you're a theatre manager booking Sadowitz, or if you're a punter buying a ticket, you surely know what you are letting yourself in for, even without all the trigger warnings plastered on the announcements advertising his show. No one has to read a Rushdie book. No one has to go and see a Sadowitz show. To want to live in a world where Rushdie books are available to read, and where people are free to attend a Sadowitz show, even if they don't remotely to agree with, still less to approve of, everything Rushdie has written or everything Sadowitz says on stage. But that's the whole point of free speech. We should, each of us, be free to choose what books we read, what shows we attend, what films we watch. We should, each of us, be free to make these choices for ourselves. This freedom cannot be taken for granted. It has to be fought for. For there will always be those who think they know better, and who would like to choose for you. Sometimes this is the state, the Iranian state in the case of Rushdie, but, not so very long ago, the British state in the case of other novelists. D.H. Lawrence, anyone? More often in today's world, however, it is not the state at all, but other self-appointed guardians who have taken it upon themselves to police the boundaries of what we may say, or hear, or write. When Maya Forstater tweeted her view that sex is immutable and that men cannot transition to become women, she found that her employment with a think tank, the Centre for Global Development, was terminated. When Alison Bailey, A barrister at Garden Court Chambers queried her chamber's involvement with Stonewall's diversity and inclusion campaign. She found herself victimised. When Harry Miller tweeted his gender-critical views, he found the police at his door and was told by an officer that they needed to check his thinking. Maya Forsteter, Alison Bailey and Harry Miller each won their case in court, the judges ruling that their employers, in the first two cases, and the police, in Miller's case, acted unlawfully. These cases are important, for they are reminders that free speech is not just for the superstar novelists or controversy courting comedians. It is for all of us. Of course, there are big differences between Rushdie, Sadowitz, Forsteter, Bailey and Miller, but there is also a single common thread that binds them together. In each case, their speech caused offence, and in each case, instead of arguing back, somebody somewhere decided that the right thing to do was to silence them, to cancel them, or to persecute them. In each case, that was both wrong-headed and dangerous. May your pen be unbridled, wrote John Milton in 1644. May you be a perpetual reader of books unchosen, for you are the powerful or the self-appointed police officers of conformity. You don't have to agree, of course, but don't cancel what you disagree with. Engage, argue back, speak up and speak out. Have the courage of your convictions, unbridle your pen. And that was an opinion piece by Adam Tompkins. From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 17th of August 2022, from the Voices section, Ian McWhirter, Europe faces a nuclear winter as Putin prepares to ramp up his war, by columnist Ian McWhirter. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in southeastern Ukraine is the largest in Europe. It has been shelled almost by the day as Ukrainian and Russian soldiers contest the strategically important power station on the Dnipro River. The situation is almost unimaginably dangerous, not least because, right now, it is in the interest of neither side to make the installation safe. Ukraine, of course, has the distinction of being the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster, at Chernobyl in 1986. The fallout spread across Europe, contaminating sheep as far away as Cumbria. Chernobyl isotopes are still being identified in Loch Ness. The risk of history repeating itself grows by the day as Ukraine gears up to drive the Russians back across the Dnipro. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Marino Grossi, says the situation at Zaporizhzhia, which was already damaged when the Russians seized it earlier in the war, is now completely out of control. He has been calling for a military exclusion zone around the plant. Pro-Russian correspondents in the West claim that President Zelensky is deliberately endangering it in order to focus Western attention back on a war which has slipped from the headlines as energy prices soar. That is unjustified victim blaming. It was Russia's illegal invasion which caused this crisis, not the Ukrainian defence forces. Nevertheless, it is highly likely that, by accident or design, this bitter 6-month-long conflict could turn nuclear, and not just from damaged nuclear power stations. Next month, the Kremlin is expected to formally announce the annexation of those parts of the Donbass that it occupies, just as it annexed Crimea in 2014. The move is expected to be justified by a plebiscite in the region, which has a substantial Russian-speaking population. President Putin insists that Ukraine is part of historic Russia and should never have been allowed to become independent after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990. This means only one thing, according to military analysts like General Sir Richard Barrons, a former UK Chief of Staff, that Russia will now consider the use of nuclear weapons in Donbass as legitimate in the defence of the motherland. You may think that Putin hardly needs any excuse to use his battlefield nuclear weapons, which are already a key part of the Russian military arsenal. These small-scale nuclear weapons, delivered by artillery or missiles, are designed to take out an area the size of a football stadium rather than an entire city. At least, that's the theory. Clearly the fallout from any nuclear detonation would spread far beyond said sports ground, but contamination from a single device would be unlikely to spread beyond the borders of Ukraine. Moreover, since Ukraine is not in NATO, there would be no immediate question of retaliation in kind under Article 5, which obliges members of the alliance to treat aggression against one as aggression against all. Russia would claim that the nuclear retaliation is justified in halting military aggression that threatens the existence of the Russian state. This is pure sophistry, of course, but Putin would insist that the annexed territories of Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine are part of Russia. To preempt annexation, the Ukrainian armed forces are mounting a counterstrike in the Kherson region. The object is to force Russia back east over the Dnieper River. This would hopefully prevent Russia extending its occupied territory to Odessa and thus cutting Ukraine off from the Black Sea. But, more importantly, a successful counterattack would demonstrate to the Western powers supporting President Zelensky that the stalemate could be broken and that the Ukrainian army could eventually win. It's no secret that many European politicians would like this war to be ended sooner rather than later. They hope for a Ukrainian victory, of course, but many privately believe that President Zelensky will eventually have to accept partition. Crimea has already gone. It will take huge military effort to drive the Russians fully out of the Donbass, not least because they have support from many Russian speakers in the east of Ukraine. To mount a full-scale counter-offensive, Ukraine would need supremacy of around 5-1, according to experts like Barons and Lawrence Friedman, author of the forthcoming book Command, The Politics of Military Operations from Korea to Ukraine. With around 100,000 Russian soldiers deployed, that would mean a Ukrainian army of 500,000, probably more. Each Ukrainian soldier would have to be trained, armed, fed, uniformed and supplied with ammunition. This on top of the £5 billion a month that the Ukraine already requires just to keep on functioning. A successful liberation of the Donbass would require artillery, tanks, air support, radar and field hospitals, as well as sophisticated weapon systems like the American HIMARS rocket launchers that have proven so effective in destroying the bridges of the Dnieper over which the Russian army around Kherson is supplied. The big question this winter is whether recession hit Europe is prepared to pay the cost. Sweeping Russia out of Ukraine may not require the active involvement of Western soldiers, but it will require arms and money. The weapons inventory of countries like Britain is already being rapidly depleted. To restock and build the Ukrainian army may require not military mobilisation, but a degree of industrial mobilisation if Europe is serious about driving Putin out of Ukraine altogether. Skeptics like the military historian Max Hastings and the MIT professor Barry Posen have long said this is not possible or even desirable. Hastings was highly critical of Boris Johnson's boosterism of Ukraine and argued that President Zelensky would have to accept partition, if only because the West will not go the distance. Humanitarian arguments for a ceasefire will grow over winter. Germany is already reining back its military supplies, according to Ukrainian sources. Of course, it isn't over till it's over. Russia is suffering terrible casualties. According to Lawrence Friedman, the Russian army cannot continue to suffer like this indefinitely, and Putin himself is not entirely secure from his oligarchs, which is why some analysts are speculating about a nuclear démarche. As if we didn't have trouble enough, Europe could be facing a nuclear winter. And that piece was by Ian McWhirter. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald. From the Glasgow Times, Thursday the 18th of August 2022, from the news section, more than 72% of Scottish households could fall into fuel poverty. By Emma Sabliak, digital reporter. More than 7 out of 10 Scottish households could be experiencing fuel poverty by January next year, according to research. A study has shown that 2/3 of all households across the UK will be struggling to make ends meet after their energy price cap rises. The latest forecast by energy consultancy company Oxylone expects the price cap to rise to £3,639 in October, and then again to £4,729 in January. Research by the University of York shows that 18 million families across the UK will be struggling to cope with those staggering rises. Scotland would see the second highest percentage, 72.8%, of households slipping into fuel poverty at the start of next year. Northern Ireland is the only UK region to see a higher percentage at 76.3%. Wales could see 68.7% of its households reaching fuel poverty. The research published by the Guardian newspaper further stated that 86.4% of pensioner couples will fall into fuel poverty. Single-parent households with 2 or more children will bear the brunt at 90.44%. The Shadow Secretary of State for Climate Change and Net Zero, Ed Miliband, responded to the report by calling for an energy price freeze to address the national emergency of inflation. The Labour MP wrote on Twitter, "These shocking figures show the full scale of the national emergency that could unfold unless the Conservative government acts to freeze energy bills. We simply cannot allow the British people to suffer in this way. We need an emergency price freeze." It followed similar proposals by Keir Starmer made on Monday to freeze the energy price cap at its current level of £1,971 for 6 months from October. Meanwhile, the energy regulator, which sets up the official price caps, has seen growing pressure to protect households after its director, Christine Farnish, stepped down. Ms Farnish told The Times the watchdog had not struck the right balance between the interests of consumers and the interests of suppliers. The energy regulator has faced criticism in recent months for not doing enough to protect families during the global energy crisis. It is understood Ms Farnish's resignation is linked to Ofgem's decision to change the methodology of the price cap to allow suppliers to recover some of the high energy backwardation costs sooner rather than later. And that report was by Emma Sabliak. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of August 2022, from the news section, MP Margaret Ferrier pleads guilty to breaking COVID laws, by Andrew Learmonth. Former SNP MP Margaret Ferrier has pleaded guilty to breaching COVID rules. The politician, who sits as in the Commons as an independent, admitted travelling on a train between Scotland and London after being told to self-isolate in September 2020. Prosecutors claimed the politician had culpably and recklessly booked a test for COVID-19 and then visited other places, despite stating in the test booking application that she had symptoms of the disease. The initial charges claimed she willfully exposed people to the risk of infection, illness and death by travelling throughout Glasgow and the surrounding areas, as well as journeys to and from London. Ferrier visited a number of locations when she should have been self-isolating, including the Lifestyle Leisure Centre, Sweet Pea Boutique and Vanilla Salon in Rutherglen. She also allegedly visited Grace and Flavour Restaurant in Bearsden, Eastern Bartonshire, as well as St Mungo's Church, Glasgow, and Vic's Bar in Prestwick. Ferrier then took a taxi journey from her home in Glasgow's Cambuslang to Central train station. She then travelled to London Euston Station and went to the Houses of Parliament, where she made a speech in the chamber. She then made the return journey to Glasgow from London by train, fearing that she might have to isolate in a hotel. The MP told her SNP colleagues that she was leaving Parliament early to visit a sick family member. She initially pleaded not guilty, and 10 days were set aside for the trial, but she changed her plea in Glasgow Sheriff Court on Thursday. The plea will almost certainly increase pressure on her to stand down from the Commons. She was elected as an SNP MP in 2015, but lost the whip after details of the rule flouting were made public in October 2020. At the time, Ms Ferrier referred herself to the Police and Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has previously described Ferrier's actions were dangerous and indefensible and called on the MP to stand down. However, in an interview with the Scottish Sun just weeks after the news of the rule breaking emerged, the MP insisted she would stay on. She suggested the illness had made her act out of character. She told the paper, "A lot of people say COVID makes you do things out of character. You're not thinking straight. I'm not making any excuse. At that moment when I thought it would come back negative and it was positive, I was utterly shocked. You could have knocked me over." And that was an article by Andrew Learmonth. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of August 2022, from the news section. Plan to remove Glasgow icon for restoration after failed conservation, by Brian Donnelly. An A-listed Glasgow icon is set to be removed for restoration under proposals lodged with city planners. Clyde Gateway, a regeneration partnership between Glasgow City Council, South Lanarkshire Council, Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish Government, said the application comes after issues with corrosion were identified in an inspection. In a report included in its application to planners, Clyde Gateway noted a 2010 £1.4 million investment in Bridgeton Cross, central to which was the restoration of the decorative cast iron structure known as the Bridgeton Umbrella. Topped by a clock tower made by George Smith & Co. in 1874, it was erected as a shelter, and it's owned and maintained in the longer term by Glasgow City Council. The wider 2010 works to upgrade the physical environment at Bridgeton Cross saw the creation of a large, flexible, high-quality paved public space with associated lighting, trees and street furniture centred on the structure. However, it said the specification and execution of works on site did not result in a project worthy of the status of the structure. A 2015 Industrial Heritage Consulting Conservation Assessment report found the quality of the general workmanship and supervision has been substandard, but on the basis of the specification provided as part of the project, it would not be possible to hold a contractor or subcontractor to account for the failure, which was a consistent view from two independent architectural metalwork specialists. That report found the earlier project to conserve the Bridgeton Cross shelter failed due to poor initial specification and a lack of specialist expertise in the conservation of this type of structure. The works were funded by Clyde Gateway and a grant award from Glasgow City Heritage Trust. Ian Manson, Chief Executive of Clyde Gateway, said, "The umbrella is an important part of the historic fabric of Bridgeton Cross." Clyde Gateway gave the umbrella a much needed clean and repaint ahead of the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and we are delighted to now undertake a best practice restoration, which will require its removal and restoration under factory conditions, which was simply not possible under the previous works. He added, "We intend to issue regular information on the progress being made and provide reassurance that the best possible care has been taken of this historic structure that means so much to local people." Earlier indicative timescales for renovation suggested the structure would spend 3 months off-site and 2 months being rebuilt at the cross. The planning application involves external alterations, including dismantling structure, with fabric repairs made off-site and the shelter re-erected. And that article was by Brian Donnelly. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of August 2022, from the news section. Firefighters battling blaze at popular South Lanarkshire Hotel, by Sarah Pacciaroni. Firefighters are battling a massive blaze at a popular hotel in South Lanarkshire. Flames were seen breaking through the roof of the Popinjay Hotel on Lanark Road in Rosebank near Carluke on Thursday morning. 10 fire engines and 2 other appliances have been sent to the scene, along with a number of crews. There has been no reports of casualties. Locals told of how the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service rushed to the scene. Rosebank resident Wendy May Newton, who lives opposite the hotel, told her sister paper The Glasgow Times that it looks like half the gym roof is gone. She added, "It started around 7:30 am. There were about 6 or 7 fire engines, I counted, plus support service. Then one more engine appeared, then another several minutes later, and gradually more and more arrived." A Scottish Fire and Rescue Service spokesperson said, "We were alerted at 7:18 am on Thursday, August the 18th, to reports of a building on fire at Lanark Road." From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 18th of August 2022, from the news section. Sunak and Truss defend economic visions after warning over permanent tax cuts, by David Ball, political correspondent. Rishi Sunak has insisted his economic strategy remains realistic, despite economists warning widespread tax cuts could have dire consequences. The former Chancellor, who is vying to become the next Prime Minister, is determined to deliver all of his economic pledges, despite the alarm. The reassurance comes following a stark report from economists warning of the danger tax cuts could pose to the public purse. Frontrunner Liz Truss and Mr Sunak, who have repeatedly clashed over tax cuts and competing visions for the UK economy, were faced with a sobering analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, which warned that permanent tax cuts could exacerbate the pressures on public spending. The warning comes amid a worsening economic outlook for the UK, with inflation rising to 10.1% in July, and as passengers across the country prepare to grapple with the latest wave of rail, tube and bus industrial action over the coming days. Mr Sunak, who is believed to be trailing his rival in support among the party members, set to choose the next Tory leader, issued the IFS study to attack Ms Truss and her economic plans. He said he would help society's most vulnerable through the cost of living crisis. Speaking on ITV's This Morning, Mr Sunak said, "I can guarantee that all of the things I've just told you about will happen because that's what the government should be about. It should be about under-promising and over-delivering. That's how you trust government and politics. We've probably not had enough of that. That's why, in this leadership race, I've not been making lots of easy promises that I think are false. I'd rather lose than say things I don't believe can be delivered. I'd rather be honest with people. High inflation and interest rates will push up public spending, including on benefits and pensions, the IFS predicts. Combined with weak economic growth, this is likely to offset the effect of any expected increased tax intake." The report warns, "A prudent Prime Minister and Chancellor, determined to deliver on the government's existing fiscal targets and to manage the nation's finances responsibly, would be wise not to bank on higher revenues matching higher spending." Both candidates, during the latest campaign hustings in Belfast, doubled down on their economic policies, as Mr Sunak said the Foreign Secretary would be guilty of moral failure if she does not focus on the nation's poorest, as he warned her policies could further stoke inflation. Ms Truss instead insisted taxes are too high and they're potentially choking off growth. Team Truss appeared unfazed by the IFS analysis, with campaign sources stressing that Ms Truss would use an emergency budget to kickstart her plan to get her economy growing and put more money into the pockets of hard-working people. Liz will cut taxes using the existing fiscal headroom and will get debt to GDP falling within the next 3 years. You cannot tax your way to growth, and business as usual will not do. But IFS Director Paul Johnson said, "Now is not the time for big tax cuts, which could themselves make inflation worse." And that report was by David Ball.
The Herald Scotland, Thursday, 18th of August 2022. Voices. Mark Smith. Farewell, Jeremy Paxman. You taught us a lot about Scotland. The thing about University Challenge is that Jeremy Paxman will ask a question, and before you've had time to screw up your face and go, some swotty McSwat has buzzed in and answered it. Questions like this one, for example. Which number is the smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways? Think about it. Answer at the end. Here's another question. Will University Challenge be the same without Jeremy, Jezza, Paxo, the Paxinator, and other names he's never been called? The long-running host has announced he's stepping down, and we are sad. We will miss his sarcastic eyebrow, his sceptical upper lip, and the dismissive way he went poof. We liked it when he talked disdainfully to us. It's also fair to say that Paxman is one of the finest examples of a particular type of presenter that's becoming rarer. Highly educated and highly male. Call it a starter for 10. But do you think the new host of University Challenge is likely to be a man like Jeremy, or likely to be a man? Do we always have to make things different? I grew up with intelligent middle-aged middle-class men on the telly telling me what's what, and I'm used to it. I like it. I appreciate Paxman for personal reasons too. When he published his book on the British Empire, I talked to him about it, and it turned out we were both General Gordon fanboys. But a conversation with Paxman also reveals the slightly misleading nature of his TV persona. I had assumed I'd get a question out of my mouth and he'd tell me not to be so bloody stupid. In fact, he turned out to be one of the easiest and most pleasant interviews I've ever done. Unlike some people, he doesn't take what you say personally and expects you not to take what he says personally either. Again, I like that. We also had some fun about Scotland. Paxman, you will remember, has been accused of being a Scotland hater, mainly because he had a pop at Robert Burns and some ding-dongs with the likes of George Galloway, which some said exposed his Anglo-arrogance. I asked Paxman about that, and he said Scots are just easy to wind up. And he's right, a lot of us are. And if this column is making you angry, you've probably proved my point. It's fair to say that Paxman's book on Empire, and other books like it, can teach us a lot about Scotland and the Scots. Paxman isn't the first to point out that much of the British Empire had a Scottish accent, and much of the brutality, and there was a lot, had Scottish fingerprints on it. Paxman was clear. Nobody took to Empire with greater gusto than the Scots. But Paxman thought the end of the Empire could also help explain why Scotland is where it is now. Look at the circumstances around the Act of Union, he said, and the dashing of Scottish imperialist ambitions at Darien. And it isn't surprising there was a desire to throw in our lot with the English. Likewise, it isn't surprising that once the Empire's gone, there's a sense among some Scots of it being time to weaken the links because the forces that led to the links in the first place are weaker. Empire and war make them stronger, and we no longer have empire and war. There will be some who disagree and think our current situation is more about English Tories than the British Empire, but anyone who thinks long ago doesn't have anything to do with now needs to take another look at Scotland. It's also good for us to have non-Scots, even, yikes, Englishmen, giving their views on Scotland. Paxman told me what he thought with great force, but great humour too. He's not scared of opinions, his, mine, yours, and we shouldn't be scared of other opinions either. I'm going to miss Paxman. I wonder if anyone like him will emerge on TV again. Oh, and the answer is 1729. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald. The Herald Scotland, Thursday, 18th of August 2022. Voices. Scottish Devolution and the New Democratic Deficit. Is History Repeating Itself? By Agenda, by George Thorley. The case for establishing a devolved Parliament for Scotland was rooted in a belief that Westminster failed to properly reflect the interests, priorities and needs of the Scottish people and businesses. A powerful lawmaking and resource allocating devolved Parliament located in Edinburgh would erase this democratic deficit. There have been enormous positive constitutional changes to the governance of Scotland since the late 1990s. However, a serious weakness of our present devolution is the long-term democratic consequences of the imbalance between Scotland's 32 democratically accountable councils and Scotland's 109 non-elected national public bodies, quangos. The scale of quango activities raises serious questions about the operation of Scotland's democratic system. In developing a new policy in which anonymous quasi-public bodies spend very significant amounts of public money, is the Scottish Government supplanting one democratic deficit with another? 3 Scotland Acts, 1998, 2012 and 2016, have resulted in the Scottish Parliament having legislative control over a large part of the public realm. Its 2021-22 budget was over £55 billion. The original advocates for devolution would surely find this impressive. What they might not understand is why the underlying principle of devolution, subsidiarity, where power and responsibility is allocated to the lowest appropriate level of accountability, has remained so undeveloped by successful Scottish governments. Despite loudly arguing for more and more powers, funds and responsibilities to be devolved from Westminster, the Scottish Government has, with two exceptions, city-region deals and integrated joint boards, failed to devolve any of its responsibilities to the other level of democratically accountable government in Scotland, local authorities and their partnerships. In that sense, the devolution project remains unfinished. The Scottish Government has chosen instead to maintain direct executive control of over 75% of its spending through its departments and its retinue of 43 executive non-departmental bodies, 7 advisory non-departmental bodies, 3 tribunals, 4 public corporations, 23 health bodies, 10 executive agencies, 8 non-ministerial offices and 13 other significant national bodies. That's a whopping 111 national public bodies, quangos, for 5.4 million people. Over its 23-year life, rather than extending the principle of devolution within Scotland, the Scottish Government has in fact retained all the transfers from Westminster and, in addition, has taken away functions from local government. With the creation in 2013 of Police Scotland, 8 joint police boards, populated by local authority councillors, were abolished and replaced by 1 non-elected board. The same applied to the Fire and Rescue Service. This represented a substantial loss of democratic accountability in 2 key public service areas. With the exception of the 2 of our national parks, where directly elected board members and council nominees are in the majority, local democratic accountability is absent from all Scotland's quangos. Who is ultimately responsible for Scotland's 111 quangos? On a day-to-day basis, it's Cabinet Ministers. How much time can each minister allocate to each individual quango? Does their accountability to the Scottish Parliament and in responding to the media and the public mean that ministerial minds get driven into excessive quango detail? Surely our ministers should be looking to the horizon, detecting opportunities and anticipating upcoming issues, and also pinching the best ideas from other nations. Precisely the freedoms and innovative opportunities that devolved government provides. If, however, the answer to the above train of thought is, ministers don't really spend that amount of time dealing with quangos, it poses the response, well, who is accountable for the £22 billion that quangos receive? 2021-22. The real challenge for our government is finding robust cross-departmental solutions to the big issues. Devolution was supposed to make that easier. However, add the challenge of coordinating the activities of over 100 quangos piles on the complexity. Exceptionally, in 2003, the Scottish Parliament placed a duty on councils to each prepare and deliver community plans focusing on local needs and opportunities. After all, councils have local knowledge and experience in coordinating services to deliver solutions. They are also accountable via their 1,200 plus councillors. All quangos were required to participate but did not have a duty to adhere to each community plan's policy and investment outcomes. Being answerable to government ministers meant their focus was national. Primarily for that reason, community planning has still not delivered on its early promise of fully integrated local public services. Scotland's 111 national public bodies, their boards, management and the thousands of public servants work hard to deliver their organisations and national priorities. It is, however, a serious challenge to the devolved Parliament that seems to believe that channeling many billions of pounds per annum to organisations that have no local accountability is a satisfactory outcome after 23 years of devolution. Arguably, the absence of local accountability and transparency from so many public services feeds alienation. It is surely time to think again on the respective roles and responsibilities of unelected quangos and democratically accountable local authorities to avoid a new democratic deficit. George Thorley was Assistant CEO for Strathclyde Regional Council.
The Herald, Friday the 19th of August 2022. News. Logan Energy. Locogen. Archibby Hydrogen Distillery. This article is by Brian Donnelly. Scottish hydrogen experts Logan Energy and renewables specialists Lanarkshire have been given the go-ahead for a groundbreaking £3 million green distillery project. The firms have been granted planning permission for a wind turbine and electrolyser at Archibby Distillery near Montrose. The development will enable the distillery to power its operations from environmentally sustainable green hydrogen, which is hydrogen created from renewable electricity from the wind turbine and local water sources. The project is expected to demonstrate the technical feasibility of using hydrogen in distillation and similar processes, and has huge potential to be replicated in other industry settings. It has been backed by a £3 million funding award from the UK Government Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS, Green Distilleries Competition. Planning permission for the wind turbine, connecting cables and hydrogen electrolyser compound has now been granted by Angus Council with unanimous support from councillors. East Lothian-based Logan Energy and Edinburgh-based Lanarkshire are now preparing to start work on site at Archibby later this summer, with installation of the wind turbine scheduled for November. The aim is for the new hydrogen system to be in operation next year. It will help displace the oil which the distillery currently uses to make steam for the distillation process. The Green Distilleries Fund aims to help distilleries cut CO2 emissions by 1 million tonnes, contributing to Scottish and UK net zero targets. Bill Ireland, Chief Executive of Logan Energy, said that as demand to switch to net zero technologies continues to grow, the project is a further example of the important role hydrogen can play. He said, "We are incredibly proud to be supporting businesses with their net zero ambitions, and especially so in this project as we are helping a Scottish distillery demonstrate real green credentials." Andy Lyle, Chief Executive of Lanarkshire, said this is a great step forward for Archibby as we help them demonstrate how distilleries and the wider process industries can use new technologies to create cleaner, sustainable businesses. John Sterling, director of Archibby Distillery, said, "We aim to be one of the world's most sustainable distilleries, so being able to use green hydrogen power will be another significant step in our sustainability journey." The Archibby project will comprise a single 1 megawatt wind turbine on Archibby's farmland, which will export its generation to a green hydrogen hub via dedicated private wire. The green hydrogen hub will be based at Archibby Distillery and comprise an electrolyser, compressor and storage. Green hydrogen will be created by the electrolyser, and a direct pipe will take the stored hydrogen from the storage vessel to the existing plant room. A burner and boiler compatible with burning hydrogen will then be used to create steam, which will deliver the heat for distillation. It comes as distiller White & Mackay is also expected to be one of the first users of green hydrogen produced from a separate planned electrolyser on the Cromarty Firth. White & Mackay believe its decarbonation drive would be boosted by a scaling up of the clean gas production plant that would be enabled by green Freeport status. This article is by Brian Donnelly. The Herald, Friday the 19th of August 2022. News. Scottish councils sending homeless to England due to lack of accommodation. This article is by Andrew Learmonth. Councils in Scotland are asking homeless people to move to England due to a lack of accommodation, Shelter has warned. The claim from the charity came as grim new statistics revealed that there were 35,230 applications for homelessness assistance made in 2021-22, a 3% increase from the year before. 8,635 children are currently stuck in temporary accommodation, up 17% on last year and the highest number on record. Shelter said the figures showed that the homelessness system in Scotland was on the brink of failure and that the country was unable to provide for the most basic of human rights. The housing organisation said that their clients in central Scotland had been asked to move hundreds of miles to the Highlands or the north of England because there were not enough homes to support the unprecedented number of people in the homelessness system. They have warned that the numbers are only likely to get worse in the months ahead as the cost of living crisis hits. Alison Watson, Director of Shelter Scotland, said, "When I learned that councils were asking our clients to leave jobs and family in the Central Belt to take up accommodation in England, I did a double take. Surely it has not come to this, that today in Scotland we appear unable to provide for the most basic of human rights, the right to a safe home." Scotland was in the grip of a housing emergency before the pandemic hit. The political will to get people off the streets showed what can be done, but instead of pushing on and finishing the job of getting people a permanent home, we have gone backwards. Homelessness today is no longer characterised by people sleeping on the streets. Instead, it is children trapped, sometimes for years, in temporary accommodation. Accommodation which is often damp, miserable, and completely unsuitable for anybody, much less a child. These statistics show that with more people becoming homeless, more people stuck in the system for longer, and more people likely to become homeless as the cost of living crisis bites, Scotland's homelessness system is now on the brink of failure. Ms Watson urged First Minister Nicola Sturgeon to lead a new national initiative to ensure every council has the homes they need and to guarantee the legal rights of everyone in Scotland to a safe home if they find themselves homeless. Responding to the figures, Housing Secretary Shona Robertson said these statistics remind us why our commitment to prevent and end homelessness is so important and show us that there is still work to do. While it is encouraging that rough sleeping is at its lowest level in 20 years and repeat homelessness is at a 10-year low, I am deeply concerned at the increase in the number of children in temporary accommodation. This is especially disappointing as 20 local authorities are managing to reduce the use of temporary accommodation. This article is by Andrew Learmonth.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 19th of August 2022, from the sports section, Ange Postecoglou provides Alexandro Bernabei's Celtic update after Glasgow arrest, by David Irvin. Ange Postecoglou has confirmed Alexandro Bernabei is available for Sunday's clash against Hearts after an alleged incident in Glasgow. The Celtic fullback is believed to have been arrested in the city centre on Monday over an alleged road traffic offence. However, Postecoglou has confirmed the defender is training and free to feature against Hearts despite ongoing internal and external processes. Speaking in his pre-match press conference, Postecoglou commented, "There was an alleged incident earlier in the week. Now processes are taking place both externally and internally. When they come to a conclusion, we'll take the appropriate measures." Pushed on whether Bernabei is available to play against Hearts, he added, "Yeah, he's training and he's available." A Place Scotland statement reads, "On Monday, August 15th, 2022, a 21-year-old man was arrested and charged with a road traffic offence which took place in Glasgow city centre. He has been released on an undertaking to appear in court at a later date." And that article was by David Irvin. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 19th of August 2022, from the sports section, Hibs midfielder Joe Newell praises talented squad as he lauds Martin Boyle return. Piece by Anthony Brown. Joe Newell is adamant Hibernian have a squad equipped to flourish once all their new players get to grips with the cinched Premiership. The Easter Road club have had a major turnover of players over the last couple of transfer windows and are still in the early months of manager Lee Johnson's reign. Although they have had a mixed start to the campaign, Newell, one of Hibs' senior players, is encouraged by the standard of the recent recruits and is confident the team will soon ignite when the new faces are properly integrated. I feel like we're definitely still in the transitional period, he said. We've got a young team with a lot of new and foreign lads who haven't played in the league before, but we've just got to get going. We can't use it as an excuse. I think we've got a very good squad this year. I think we've improved in terms of the squad. We've got some really talented lads now, and once they settle and get going, it's only going to help us. Newell expects the recent return of talismanic attacker Martin Boyle, following 7 months in Saudi Arabia, to help set Hibs in the right direction. It helps massively having Martin back, he said. You could see in the Hearts game the lift the crowd and us players got having him back. He's a phenomenal player, so he's only going to help any team. He's done amazingly for Hibs over the last few years. His directness, his pace, his quality, his finishing is something we missed when he left in January, so to have him back is brilliant. Newell is relishing Saturday's cinched Premiership visit from Rangers and hopes to enjoy another memorable moment against the Ibrox club after last November's 3-1 victory in the Premier Sports Cup semi-final. The semi-final last year was one of my best moments in football, said the midfielder. To be 3-0 up after half an hour or whatever it was a pinch me moment. It was amazing. Those type of moments are good, and the atmosphere in these type of games are the reason you love playing football. Rangers are currently in the middle of a Champions League playoff against PSV Eindhoven, with the tie delicately poised at 2-2 ahead of Wednesday's second leg in the Netherlands. I don't really know what they'll do team-wise, but I'm presuming they might make a few changes because of the game on Wednesday, Newell said. They're going to have really good quality out there, so we'll have to try and make it uncomfortable for them. That's where the home advantage and the crowd can hopefully make a difference. We know in recent history we've had a good result against them, and there have been a couple of other times when we feel like we deserve more than we have got, so we're going in full of confidence. And that article was written by Anthony Brown.
The Herald Voices, 19th of August. The bid to boost drinking alcohol in Japan. Issue of the day by Maureen Sugden. In many countries around the world, there are focused efforts to reduce alcohol intake and cultivate at the very least a moderate approach to drinking. But in Japan, young people are being encouraged to drink up. Cheers. The Japanese government wants the country's young people to help reinvigorate the alcoholic beverage industry, and so the country's national tax body has launched Sake Viva to encourage drinking. The campaign, running until September 9th, calls on those aged 20 to 39 to conceive exciting new business concepts to revitalise a struggling industry that has been badly impacted by not just the pandemic, but lifestyle choices and demographic changes such as the ageing population. Japan is regarded as super-age society, the oldest in the world, with more than 28% of the population 65 or older. Japan is also home to a record 80,000 centenarians, and by 2036, people aged 65 and over will represent a third of the population. As the country ages, the youth demographic, which elsewhere or in times gone by may have propped up the drinks industry, is diminishing. The decline has been ongoing, with taxes on alcohol products making up 5% of the government's tax revenue in 1980, but falling to 1.7% within a decade, according to the Japan Times. And according to the tax agency's data, Japan's average per adult annual intake of alcohol decreased from 100 litres per year in 1995 to 75 litres in the 2020 fiscal year. So Sake Viva, taking the name from the country's national drink of sake, an alcoholic beverage made from fermented rice. The campaign wants new ideas to stimulate demand amongst new people. The competition is for entrants to come up with new branding ideas, promotions and new approaches. In this project, by asking young people to propose their own business plans, we will appeal to young people for the development and promotion of Japanese alcoholic beverages, and at the same time we will revitalise the industry, the initiative states. The plan is, a tax agency official told the Japan Times, as working from home made strides to a certain extent during the COVID-19 crisis, many people may have come to question whether they need to continue the habit of drinking with colleagues to deepen communication. If the new normal takes root, then that will be additional headwind for tax revenue. What has the reaction been? Japanese media reports the reaction has been split, with some criticism voiced about the encouragement of drinking alcohol and of unhealthy habits. Any ideas so far? Suggestions online so far include using AI, artificial intelligence, to create digital social venues where celebrities perform as virtual reality hosts to serve drinks.
Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 24th of August 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Books. Author David Lagerkrantz has penned a classic murder mystery by Herald Magazine. Fiction. Dark music. David Lagerkrantz, Maclehose Press, £20, ebook £11.99. A crime thriller inspired by Sherlock Holmes, written by the author who successfully continued writing Stieg Larsson's Millennium Trilogy. Sounds like a dream, but it's happened. And Stockholm-based David Lagerkrantz has penned a classic murder mystery bringing together two unlikely allies, needing each other's expertise to uncover an international conspiracy. Local community police officer Michaela Vargas opens the story after being drafted into a murder inquiry because she knew the suspect. She teams up with Professor Hans Recke, a specialist in interrogation techniques who is brought in to help obtain a confession. Bringing together a well-educated man from the upper classes with a young local police officer from Stockholm's suburbs is an ingenious idea, and you'll love the massive contrast in styles of the two main characters as they cope with the ups and downs of a complicated investigation. One Holmes himself would have loved to solve. 8 out of 10. The Last White Man. Mohsin Hamid. Hamish Hamilton, £12.99, ebook £7.99. This latest novel by Mohsin Hamid is a parable-like account of a town whose inhabitants abruptly begin to change skin tone from white to brown. Hamid relates in a detached, rolling manner the tensions, conflicts and near-societal breakdown that result, with a particular focus on the impact on the lives of yoga instructor Una and gym trainer Anders, some of the first to change. It is a recounting relationship between Una and Anders, their thoughts and feelings, their struggles with loss of family members, identity and community. That the novel is strongest to the extent that wider the consequences of the changes, the conspiracy theories and the riots almost fade from view. The personal experience of difference and assimilation, a familiar theme from Hamid's other work, is movingly evoked and gives this novelistic fable its emotional root. 7 out of 10. Girl Crush. Florence Given. Brazen, £16.99, ebook £7.99. When artist Eartha finally dumps her unfaithful and fairly useless boyfriend, she's excited to be her true self and try dating women as well as men. She soon finds relationships can be tricky regardless of who they are with, and life gets even more complicated when her drunken coming out video makes her a social media celebrity. Given's enjoyable first novel looks at how people interact with each other in person and in online, and considers how real life differs from the constructed social media images people create. The easy-to-read story also provides an interesting perspective on the price influencers are sometimes expected to pay to make a living. 7 out of 10. Non-fiction, Forgiveness and Exploration. Marina Catacuzino. Simon & Schuster UK, £14.99. Ebook £8.99. What does it really mean to forgive? Is it an act of kindness, selfishness, or something else entirely? That's what Catacuzino's ongoing forgiveness project sets out to discover. As such, Forgiveness is less a self-help book than an in-depth case study of what exactly it means to forgive, bringing together a series of personal stories and expert insights to present and challenge various definitions of forgiveness from across the world, applying science, religion and spirituality to refine the concept. It offers readers a more objective understanding of how forgiveness can help us overcome trauma and live free from his resentment. A tentative warning: the personal stories Catacuzino has chosen are often extreme and sometimes harrowing, and can often make the sentiment of forgiveness difficult to engage with as an average reader. Approach with care and do not necessarily expect to feel more forgiving when you turn the final page. 5 out of 10. Children's Book of the Week: Peter Rabbit, Hide and Seek. Rachel Bright, illustrated by Nicola Kinnear. Puffin, price £7.99, ebook £5.99. The world's most beloved bunny is back in the childhood agenda with Hollywood films, an animated TV show, and now a new adventure thanks to author Rachel Bright. Peter Rabbit, Hide and Seek is the second in this new series of adventures for the floppy-eared hero, and sees him playing tricks on Mr. Todd the Fox and inventing a cloak of leaves to shield him from view. But when Peter becomes boastful, he attracts unwanted attention that puts him in danger once more. Bright presents a fresh story that feels in keeping with the original books and is peppered with characters from the Beatrix Potter canon, but with a sweetness that departs from Potter's franker tone. With an encouraging and playful narrative complemented by luscious illustrations by Nicola Kinnear, this lyrical tale is a welcome addition to any young child's bookshelf. 8 out of 10. By Herald Magazine. Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 24th of August 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Festival Music. Scottish Chamber Orchestra / Amelia Chef. Usher Hall, Edinburgh, 5 stars. By Keith Bruce. Festival Music. Scottish Chamber Orchestra / Amelia Chef. Usher Hall, Edinburgh, Keith Bruce, 5 stars. Violin Concerto No. 1 by Max Bruch is surely the most played violin concerto in the canon at present, but audiences never tire of hearing it. Nicola Benedetti may well have performed it more often than anything else in her repertoire, but in partnership with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra and its Russian principal conductor Maxim Amelyanishev, she found new things to say on Monday evening. This was always going to be a special occasion, a concert appearance and festival director Fergus Linehan's final programme by the woman who succeeds him in the role in a few weeks, and Benedetti had a statement outfit for it in spangled white jumpsuit that even the most misogynistic London critic would struggle to identify as gym wear. In other ways, understatement was the order of the night, from Louise Goodwin's timpani roll and the muted winds that usher in the soloist. This was an account of the concerto very carefully measured. Benedetti's first note in the violin, firm and assertive, but also quiet, and perhaps slightly extended. Although we saw the exuberant side of Amelia Anichev later, it was after much of a notably meticulous maxim. The soloist treated her cadenza at the end of the first movement as little more than a bridge to the central adagio, which is the romantic heart of this romantic concerto. Its dynamics beautifully controlled by the conductor in what was a partnership performance rather than a star vehicle. It was also noticeable that Benedetti did not attack her first entry in the closing movement as she once would have. The Hungarian fireworks of this finale were not as gaudy as we've heard them in the past, and all the better for it. And as crowd pleasers go, the meditation from Massenet's Thais, with the conductor at the piano, could not have been bettered as an encore. Amelyanishev was even more in his element after the interval, directing this large edition of this SCO through his choice of music from Tchaikovsky's ballet The Sleeping Beauty. Harpist Eleanor Hudson and principal cello Philip Hyam were among the leading solo turns in a reading shorn of any Wagnerian pomposity, in which just 20 first and second violins proved ample to communicate the rhythmic complexities of the score. The precision tempi and ensemble coherence created by this most eloquent of conductors made it easy to imagine the dancers the music was composed for, and in true Amelyanishev style, this DVD came with encore extra features after the carefully unfolded Act 2 finale. By Keith Bruce.
The Herald, Monday the 22nd of August 2022. News. Private firms invited to bid for £150 million contract for the NHS. This article is by Helen McCardle. Private firms are being invited to bid for a £150 million contract that includes providing staff to carry out operations in NHS hospitals at weekends over the next 5 years. Tender documents published earlier this week by NHS National Services Scotland, NSS, the procurement arm of the health service, outlines requests for suppliers to provide teams to carry out procedures utilising NHS Scotland Health Board facilities, i.e. theatres at weekends, to reduce waiting times and or increase health board capacity to provide increased patient care. This would cover a wide range of specialities including anaesthetics, gynaecology, orthopaedics, cardiology, breast surgery and neurology, among others. The procurement document, which is split into 4 separate lots, also invites suppliers to compete for contracts, providing suitably qualified staff to run virtual diagnostic clinics via an online portal and for mental health services in hospitals or remotely. Both are described as efforts to reduce the waiting times and or provide a service that the hospital is unable to provide under its current capacity. It was not unusual pre-pandemic for health boards to cover the cost of outsourcing some patients' operations to private hospitals in a bid to reduce waiting times. However, the latest move, insourcing private providers into the NHS to make up a shortfall of capacity and manpower, is a reflection of ongoing recruitment challenges and a need to urgently ramp up elective activity, which has been partly hindered by extremely high COVID rates since Omicron began spreading in December. Suppliers are also being asked to submit bids to provide fully staffed mobile modular units, which can be placed on sites to increase the capacity of the hospital by increasing space for diagnosing treating patients and the provision of patient care. These temporary prefabricated facilities would be used to accommodate services ranging from cancer wards, emergency rooms and maternity wards to cardiac surgery, microbiology labs and intensive care units, among others, according to the contract document. Modular buildings, which have already been assembled at a number of NHS sites in England, can be custom built in a matter of weeks and added onto the existing hospital estate. The contract document makes clear that these are expected to remain in place beyond the initial 5-year timeframe. It states it is envisaged that the provision of this service would be a provider of the mobile modular units providing the staff as a full service. It is envisaged that the services delivered through this lot will be longer term and allow for more consistency through long-term agreements for the provision of services. Bidders have until September the 15th to submit applications. Potential participants are expected to have been trading for a minimum of 2 years and have a turnover in excess of £1 million per annum. But new startup companies unable to meet this criteria will also be considered on the basis of entering into a 6-month pilot project with the relevant health board. The document also stipulates that successful bidders must be able to provide evidence of standards applied, approach to staff recruitment and training, monitoring of performance and outcomes, quality, clinical governance, patient consent, complaints and incident handling and records management. The tender comes almost a year to the day since the Scottish Government published its 5-year NHS recovery plan, although statistics for April to June this year showed that the number of elective inpatient and day case procedures being carried out was actually down compared to the same period in 2021. Scottish Conservative Shadow Health Secretary Dr Sandesh Gulan MSP said Humza Yousaf's flimsy NHS recovery plan has simply failed to remobilise crucial services across our health service. Now they are left having to outsource a huge contract in a bid to reduce waiting times and the ever-increasing backlog for patients who are suffering. My heroic colleagues on the front line and patients desperate for vital procedures are the ones who are paying the price for an SNP Health Secretary who is missing in action. Contracts like this have their place, and any attempt to support the delivery of frontline services is welcome. However, it is yet another sign that the NHS is in crisis on Humza Yousaf's watch, and that problems are only likely to get worse before they get better. Scottish Labour Health spokesperson Jackie Bailey added, while every effort to increase NHS capacity is welcome, this is symbolic of Humza Yousaf's complete failure to support our NHS. Thanks to years of SNP inaction, broken promises and failure to support staff and boost capacity, the government is being forced to shell out for what should be in-house services. We don't need more sticking plasters. We need a long-term strategy to support staff and boost capacity in our NHS. Gordon Beattie, Director of National Procurement at NHS NSS, said the tender will allow health boards to access additional capacity if they identify a specific need. He added, it is a renewal of an existing arrangement that is due to expire and is a non-commitment arrangement. This article is by Helen McCardle.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 22nd of August 2022, from the Voices section, Doug Marr, better off pensioners can help address an age-old problem. In my grandparents' day, life expectancy was a lot shorter than nowadays. For most workers, especially those toiling in heavy industry, retirement was largely a pipe dream. Most accepted they worked until they dropped. For my parents' generation, the admittedly meagre state pension meant retirement was a possibility. It seemed a simple concept. Work and contribute until you're 60 or 65 and receive a pension to support you in retirement. On reaching that milestone, the manager would make a short speech before handing over the inevitable carriage clock or canteen of cutlery, thereby drawing a line onto the lengthy working life. Many received their 65th birthday and enjoy your retirement cards on the same day. It was almost a rite of passage, a largely standardised exit from the world of work. That was then, and the world had become a more complex place, requiring a different take on the concept of reality of retirement. Of course, the idea of a standardised retirement has always been a myth. The retired have never been a homogeneous group, and this will become even more apparent as the current economic and financial crises bite deeper. It's true a sizable minority of pensioners are leading a life that would make Riley jealous. Some have retired early, enjoy final salary and index-linked pensions, and live in houses that have soared in value. The other side of the coin is, those who can't afford to give up work or rely totally on the state and possibly live in rented accommodation. For the latter, the pertinent question will be, can I ever retire, not when can I retire? Attitudes to retirement have changed over the past 20 years. In general, the population is healthier, making it possible to extend working life. According to the Office for National Statistics, the number of those continuing to work beyond 65 nearly doubled between 2006 and 2016. The trend accelerated after 2011 legislation made it illegal for employers to compulsorily retire workers when they hit 65. The Prince's Responsible Business Network clearly approves, its website declaring, businesses need to take action to prevent early exit from the workforce, support later life working, and make the most of intergenerational workplaces. Of course, it's possible the prince in question has mixed views about one member of his family steadfastly refusing to embrace retirement. In the current uncertain and volatile economic climate, the present concept of retirement may well be past its sell-by date. It's questionable whether the current model and how it's paid for is viable in the medium, let alone long term. Is it realistic or fair to expect a shrinking workforce to replace an ever-increasing number of retirees? Raising the pensionable age is already underway, but is that enough to avoid adding a pensions crisis to an already lengthening list? Former Tory Minister David Willetts, author of The Pinch, How Baby Boomers Took Their Children's Future, and Why They Should Give Us It Back, has suggested the inevitable pensions crisis is not far off. He warns urgent action is required to avoid a return to the poverty and old age experienced by our grandparents. Willetts and others have identified those currently in their 40s and 50s as being most at risk. Young people have probably accepted they will have to work into their 70s. 40 and 50-year-olds, however, have too few working years left to build large enough funds to provide even a moderately comfortable retirement. For those who never made it onto the property ladder, there will be no mortgage redemption and they will be paying rent into old age. They're in danger of becoming the generation of no retirement, working until they drop. It's time to stop treating the retired as a homogeneous group, irrespective of their circumstances. We need to level up, funded by things like a windfall tax on the unearned huge increases in the values of houses when sold. As David Willetts put it, we need to give some of it back. I have taken pelters from some baby boomers when suggesting that in the past. Yes, I know, many of you are unpaid carers and childminders and financially support grown-up children and grandchildren. Nevertheless, let's go down as a selfless, not selfish generation and step up to the mark to help address it, what again thinks to be an age-old problem. And that column was by Doug Marr. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald.
The Herald, Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022. News. Edinburgh City Council to launch £1 billion plans to build north-south tram route. This article is by David Ball. Council bosses in Edinburgh will launch ambitious plans in December to double the length of the city's tram network, with a new route expected to cost more than £1 billion. The authority's Labour-run administration will bring forward widespread plans to revitalise the city's transport system by the end of the year, including a new north-south tram line from Granton in the north of the city to the southern city boundary, as well as opening up bus corridors for key routes into the city. Proposals are also likely to include an initial examination on whether it would be possible to revive the city's suburban and south side railway line. The Herald also understands the City Council has been approached by a ferry operator investigating whether a crossing could be established between New Haven, where the current tram extension terminates, and Kirkcaldy in Fife. Council officials are drawing up a public transport action plan which will include plans for the new tram route by December. The funding for the scheme, estimated to cost more than £1 billion, is likely to come from the Scottish Government, but no clarity has been given over whether cash may have to be found from other sources to make up the total. It is believed the council hopes the new tram route would be completed by 2030 and contribute to the net zero pledge for Edinburgh by the end of this decade. The current tram extension to New Haven is set to open to passengers next year with a budget of £207 million. SNP councillors in the city are calling on the Labour administration to bring forward plans for the tram extension. SNP group leader Adam McVeigh said the climate crisis is only getting worse, as is congestion in the city. We need to help people get around easier and greener. We simply can't leave people to get stuck in traffic. Light rail was included in the Scottish Government's most recent STPR2, so we know the door is open to seek support for further extensions, so we need to start making progress now. We've still seen no plans from the Labour Tory, Lib Dem administration parties on the issues that matter most, but we will continue to set out our vision for a fairer, greener Edinburgh, which is what our residents voted for. But Labour's Scott Arthur, the Council's transport convener, has insisted that the Tram extension forms part of his administration's strategy to revamp the capital's transport system. He said this new tram line will be the largest expansion of public transport we will have seen in Edinburgh this century. The line will more than double the capacity of the tram. It's a key part of our ambition to hit net zero targets and reduce car miles in the city. We will listen to residents on this issue and work with them to transform and decarbonise the transportation system in our capital. This will also be an opportunity to invest in active transport, so we will learn any lessons from the Trams to Newhaven active travel scheme, which has been the subject of international media attention. But Conservatives in the city have issued a warning over the council placing the tram project as a priority. Tory Lothian MSP Miles Briggs said, "The trams project in Edinburgh has come at a huge expense to taxpayers across the capital, and we still haven't received the final report on why the original tram projects was so far over budget and mismanaged. Any further tram extension plans must be fully considered, given the fact Edinburgh faces a number of major funding challenges due to the underfunding of the council by SNP and Green ministers. It is clear that a tram extension is not a priority at the moment, and any future feasibility study will present significant logistical challenges and costs." This article is by David Ball. The Herald, Tuesday the 23rd of August 2022. News. Edinburgh's Heriot-Watt University hopes new technique will improve patient care. This article is by Ian McConnell. Edinburgh's Heriot-Watt University has hailed a manufacturing breakthrough which it says enables fibre optic medical devices with applications including laser surgery and cancer detection to be made in a fraction of the time previously needed. Its advance involves the use of laser beam shaping techniques. The university expressed hopes its breakthrough would accelerate adoption of new devices to improve patient care. Heriot-Watt University noted that fibre optic medical devices are used for the diagnosis and treatment of many diseases. It said a previously developed suite of highly innovative, thin and flexible optical devices has been demonstrated for the future diagnosis and treatment of a range of conditions. The devices, however, require complex systems of micro-optic lenses, mirrors and prisms, like a microscope at their end, distal end microsystems. These systems have the potential to transform the delivery of procedures like keyhole surgeries and biopsies. However, it declared that up to now, these devices have been very expensive to make, and it has limited the adoption of new breakthrough and innovative devices by hospitals and clinics. The university said its technique has dramatically reduced manufacturing time for the optical systems from hours to just a few minutes. Robert Thompson, the Heriot-Watt University professor who led the project team which developed the new manufacturing technique, said medical device technologies are vital for the detection and treatment of a huge number of diseases and healthcare challenges. Increasingly, micro devices are being developed for minimally invasive measurement and therapy, for example in cancer detection and precision laser surgery. However, up to now, they have been very expensive to produce. Coming up with a medical device innovation is exciting, but if it can't be made commercially, it won't be used in hospitals and clinics. To encourage take-up of state-of-the-art devices, it is vital to provide low-cost and highly repeatable manufacturing solutions. He added, "We've achieved a major manufacturing advance using laser beam shaping techniques. This gives us control of the shape of the focal volume and therefore more efficient use of the available laser pulse energy during manufacture. We've overcome a major drawback of using ultra-fast laser inscription techniques for manufacturing distal end microsystems for fibre optic medical instruments. The team also developed new micro-optic systems for applications in minimally invasive precision microsurgery using ultra-fast laser pulses delivered by specialist hollow core fibres developed by the University of Bath. The advances were unveiled as part of a wider report on the university's 5-year £1.3 million 4MD platform grant funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, which is part of UK Research and Innovation. The other 18 projects funded by this grant for the university included a new technique to sterilise ambulances using ultraviolet light and work on an ultrasound needle to better position epidurals during labour. Heriot-Watt University Professor Duncan Hand said, "Our overarching objective was to use the flexibility of the platform grant to develop and exploit manufacturing technologies to provide medical device manufacture that is both practical and commercially viable, leading to new and improved healthcare solutions." He added, "The 4MD platform grant has led to £11.3 million of follow-on funding for translational research and the development of medical devices, including the creation of the Medical Device Manufacturing Centre. The Medical Device Manufacturing Centre is a partnership between Heriot-Watt University, the University of Edinburgh, the University of Glasgow, and Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. This article is by Ian McConnell.
And that was this week's The Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.